Getting divorced in your 20s can leave many young people feeling like they have a black mark on their record. Marriage and family therapist Lily Cotilla is here to talk about why young couples bail out on their marriages so soon and how they can move on with their lives. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we see it all the time, especially these days in young Hollywood. People getting married at such an early age and then calling it quits so soon. Are we seeing this nationwide as a trend as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we have an idealistic view of what marriage is and that it doesn't take work. It's just fun and games. And so then when crises hit, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be a crisis, just problems arise, disagreements happen.
We're looking at Reese Witherspoon, Britney Spears, all these people getting married so young and choosing people. When you're so young, you really aren't fully formed as a personality. You change, don't you?
Yeah, the brain actually isn't fully developed until 20 for males and 23 for females. And so we don't know who we are as individuals, let alone what we want in a partner or what our views, our visions are in a marriage. So here we go into it thinking that, oh, well, this will be great. We'll be married. We'll have a happy life. We'll have kids. Well, we don't think about things like, well, who's going to work? How are the division of chores going to be set up? What are my ultimate life goals? How can I support my partner in his? So then we get to be 27, 28, and we realize we're just not compatible. We're on two different tracks.
Reality ruins everything.
Yeah, reality.
What about the divorce statistics for young people?
If people get married under the age of 20, the statistics are actually 80 to 85% divorce rate. Today, currently, people are getting married on the average of 25 for women and 27 for males, which is older than it was in the past. But the average marriage lasts about 7 to 8 years. So there's a high divorce rate, averaging 29 for women and 30.5 for males.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty daunting. It makes you scared to even tie the knot.
Right, exactly. And people go into it with, again, just various expectations, and then there are all these incentives to get married, tax breaks and health insurance and splitting the cost of rent. And so those aren't the reasons to get married, but they are factors that are considered these days.
How can young couples that are having trouble in their marriages avoid divorce?
How can they avoid divorce? Well, talking about things, planning ahead of time, what their goals are, what their views of their future are going to be like together, how they are going to manage disagreement, how they're going to support their partner even though they don't agree with them necessarily, as opposed to getting defensive and starting fights. And a lot of times disagreements will come up and we'll go straight in our head to, okay, this relationship is over now. Because in the beginning of a relationship, we have a lot of lust. We have tons of neurochemical transmitters floating around in our brain. We just love everything about our partners.
Of course.
You know, they slurp coffee and we're like, oh, that's so cute.
Yeah.
Well, 5 years later, that's not so cute anymore.
Not cute at all.
Yeah, so to really accept the person, knowing going into it that this is who she is or who he is, and then not try to change those core behaviors over the years.
What do you think the appeal is of getting young married? Is it just is there something that has changed in our society to cause people to kind of revert back to tying the knot earlier?
You know, I think part of it is all the hype in planning the wedding. People get engaged 6 months into a relationship. They don't really know who each other are at that point. And then you've got the women primarily focusing on the wedding and planning, the dress,
ring.
Yeah, the honeymoon, and then it's over and hey, we're in a real relationship here.
Right. Let's talk about some tips. Maybe somebody has been through a divorce at an early age. They made a mistake. Things didn't work out. What kind of tips?
Run.
Yeah. What kind of tips can we offer them to avoid the same mistake? And number one, I see here, learn to detect red flags early.
Yeah, a lot of times, again, when we're in this lust phase, we look over those red flags. We think that if we get married, the problems will actually just go away because we're married, but they don't. We continue the same behaviors, the same patterns, and so they actually get worse. So to notice those red flags the second time around and really pay attention to them, not with the hopes that they're going to work themselves out, and try and talk about it, and if they're not going away, then unfortunately leave.
Yeah.
And it's painful and it'll be hard, but in the long run, you won't get into the same problem again.
And that's your second piece of advice. Also, don't jump into a marriage too quickly. Really get a chance to learn who it is you're marrying.
Yeah, not the expectation of who you think he is or who you want him to be, but really who he is.
And your fourth tip is really to kind of go inside yourself and find out what happened, what was your culpability in the demise of the first marriage.
Yeah, it's so easy to put blame on our partner. Oh, he did this or she did this, and it's not about that. It's about a third dynamic that is created, not as individuals, but as how we are together. And so it's important to look at that and take ownership for how we're contributing to that cycle that happens over and over again.
And another thing, Lily, you say is to look inside yourself and see how you can grow as a person.
Yeah, take into consideration, especially for young people, what was modeled for you in your family. How did your parents deal with arguments? Did they run away? Did they scream? Did they fight? Those aren't the best modeling techniques. So we're really on our own in terms of figuring out what works, what doesn't work, how to create this relationship when we haven't had it laid out for us. There's no roadmap.
And finally, communicate with your new partner and talk about what has happened to you in your experience, I guess.
Yeah, talk about your past, talk about his past, and maybe possibly detect what some trigger points may be. For example, if a mother were really critical and a father were emotionally unavailable, we would have a tendency to pick that unconsciously in a partner. And then guess what happens? Those are the areas that become tension points. I'm always criticized. You never listen to me. But there's a piece of that that's carried with us from our childhood. So our reactions are actually more intensified than if that weren't there.
You have a book that you're recommending to people who are considering saying I do. Tell us about this.
Yeah, the hard questions. I mean, ideally, premarital therapy would be the way to go to iron out some of those issues, but couples who want to work together, this is a great bonding experience. There are tons of questions that you wouldn't think of that might come up.
It's called The Hard Questions, 100 Essential Questions to Ask Before You Say I Do. Susan Hiver is the author, and we will have this information on the website. Lily, thank you for your tips today. Very interesting, and it's possible for people to crash and burn and move on.
It is.
Happens
Tough
every
road,
day.
But yeah, it does.
Thanks, Lily.